Okay, welcome to episode 9 of the fabulous,
awesome
Pediatric Practice Management Media Cast. You'll notice if you're an avid viewer, only the viewers will know, that Brandon and I are wearing the same outfits
a week later. What a coincidence.
So that's because we're piling them up. We have so much to talk about that we knew that if we didn't start
doing the back-to-back episode.
Back-to-back. And we're only going to do 2. Otherwise, I should have called you, Brandon, today. We should have changed in between.
I know, we should have.
So the topic today is marketing your practice. And Brandon and I could both talk for hours on this subject. And in fact, not only has Brandon talked about this for hours, he will be talking about it for hours. I think, Brandon, you've got 2 speaking venues coming up in the next month or so.
I do. I'm going to be talking at, or speaking rather.
Yeah.
Let me find the Pediatric Guru at Skytop Lodge in Pennsylvania. That's going to be May 31st. Actually, the conference goes until June 2nd, but the Pediatric Guru session is going to be on May 31st, which is a Friday. And I'm going to be doing talking about social media, also about marketing your practice, and I'm going to do another topic about how to transform your practice. And some of you, if you visited my blog, I had an ebook that I was giving out for free, talk about 101 ways to transform your practice, and I'm going to be speaking about that. So yeah, and then after that, there's this little known company somewhere in the boonies up in Vermont. Some of you might know it. They're trying to get something together, and they kind of asked me to come help them out up there. I think it's called CCCT or PCCCTCPC, something like that. And anyways, like I said, they're trying to get something together. I'm going to throw them a bone. And I don't even know what dates they're going to be, but I'll make it up there. No, just kidding. So the awesomest, the most, by the way, all kidding aside, the best pediatric conference. Well, I haven't been to the Skytop, so after that I'll have a better way to compare. But in my view, and I'm not saying this just because Chip is here, but for me, and if you look at my blog, I've said it a million times there too, but to me it's one of the best pediatric practice management conference that I have attended. So I'll be speaking there, and let me see, I think I'm going to be talking about marketing and social media, I believe. Those are the 2 topics I'm going to be talking about there.
Yep, and that'll be
Chip?
July 17th through the 20th, give or take, here in Vermont. You can find the information.
Put the link in, right? We can put the link in so people can go to your site.
Yeah, sure. But if you go to pcc.com, you'll see it right on the front page, and if you Google PCC-UC for Users Conference, you'll find it. We have not only Brandon, but we have speakers from all over the country. Some of the best pediatric speakers every year. Anyone who's anyone in the pediatric speaking gig has spoken for us at one time or another. And we, even though it's the PCC Users Conference, I would say that 2/3 of the material is not PCC related.
That's what I was going to say, that even though it's a users conference, I attended the conference before I became a PCC. I think I did it like 3 or 4 years that I attended, maybe 3, I think, before I became a customer. So there's certainly plenty of stuff to go around, even if if you're not a customer, because they're all practical practice management. The type of stuff that me and Chip are actually talking about are the things that get discussed there. And also the cool thing, one of the other cool things that I don't think it's kind of like a little known fact, but it doesn't get advertised much, is that you get to spend time with the cream of the cream when it comes to other practices in the country, and you find out what they do, how they. So when you sit down and have dinner with them, lunch and everything, you ask them, what do you do for this? What do you do for that? And how many doctors do you have? And how is your schedule? And what do you do about no-shows? And what do you do about this and that? I mean, I just start asking them questions like crazy, and I've learned a lot of good things from just sitting around. Because oftentimes, the speakers will get up there and they'll say, good things, but oftentimes they're not really practical exactly the way that they talk about it. But when you talk to the practices, then they're going to give you a much better perspective. It's like, well, we don't do it exactly like that, but this is the way that we do it, and then it gives you a much different insight, which I, love. I love that part of that part of the conference as well. So, anyways, so let's get started. Marketing. Is that what you want to talk about today, Chip?
Yeah. What I'd like to do is, we got asked a specific question. How can I market my pediatric practice? And that question is open-ended enough that you and I could talk about it forever. But I know that you have some very specific advice that you like to give people about marketing your practice. And so I want to start there. Let's share with people some of the material that you've done in the past and that they might be able to get a bigger piece of if they visit SkyTop or the PCC Users Conference. Go for it.
One of the things that the people, when they ask me this question, they want to know specifically, like, will the Yellow Pages ad work versus, I don't know, sending out a mailing list? And what I like to talk about is that all those things that people ask, what's better, should I buy ad in a paper or should I send out a mailing? All those essentially are tactics. Those are just simply things that you that it's a tactic essentially to implement the marketing. So what I like to do when I'm giving these talks is not so much the quick get rich quick scheme, but rather the long way to kind of do this. Because when I talk about this and I go down the list of things that I do, then it doesn't really matter what tactic you choose, because you're going to choose the tactic that actually works best for you. So one of the things that I first start talking about is data. Before you start doing the actual marketing, I think it's very important to gather as much data as you can. If you notice some of the other big companies out there like Walmart, even Apple, and all those guys, those big boys, they have a very sophisticated way to gather as much data as they can about their customers. So good marketers measure data all the time. And for us, we perhaps don't have the retail muscle that maybe a Walmart has, but there's different things that we can do to identify different things. So for example, if you do, and I'm just going to name a few of them because there's hundreds of them, but zip codes, like where your patient's coming from. That's data that you can gather that you have in your system. And you can decide whether to focus more in a certain area or if you want to go an area that you're not drawing people from. How did you hear about us? That is a good way. If you start measuring that, you find out things that you would know that what's working out there for you. Reading here through my other stuff. For example, another thing that we've done in the past is when you have a Facebook page. The Facebook page gives you a lot of great data on demographics. So we find out who is actually following us during, on our Facebook page, the age. So what we do with that data is then we start tailoring some of the data, some of the advertisements that we do, or even the promotional things that we do to those demographics. So those are just some brief examples that I like to look before we actually do anything. I mean, you notice these big companies, they just don't simply put an ad out there. They tailor the ad specific to their target audience, and in order for them to know who their target audience is, they gather a ton of data on that, on those customers. And in our case, our patients, our families, our parents, and then based on that, then you can start gathering a strategy to move forward. I have a few more things, but I wanted to turn it over to you before I move on to some of the other things that I want to talk about.
Yeah, let me just support what you had to say completely. I think the nature of the questions that we tend to get are exactly as you described it. They focus on the tactical, and if you do any marketing work at all, you'll learn pretty quickly that that's what people love to focus on. They want to worry about what color things are, or if it should be in this notebook, or should I have a web page, and they're asking a lot of the times they've jumped 10 questions ahead. You just start at the beginning. Who is it that you're trying to talk to? And more importantly, what is it that you're trying to say? It is almost worthless to do any marketing for your practice if you don't even have a message that you want to share with people. What distinguishes your practice from everyone else's? What do you do that's better? What do you do that's different? If you can't answer those questions, or if you're in a group practice and each of you aren't on the same page about why you're in business together, it doesn't matter whether you're in the Yellow Pages or if you have this cool website. Cool websites alone don't attract customers. Yeah. Right. And so I'll turn it back to you.
Yeah, so you mentioned there the message, which is actually my next point, which is storytelling, and I like to call it storytelling. You say the marketing message or the message. Now, stories is something that I love this topic, and this is probably my favorite one out of all of them, and I can talk a ton about this. But basically, really quick, the story, what I mean by when I say story is what comes to mind when you think about the practice. The first thing that comes to mind, what your parents think about when your name gets mentioned. So if we take this outside of medical and we look at it in the business world, like when you think about Harley Davidson, what comes to mind? When you think about Apple computers or just Apple in general, what comes to mind? So products and companies tell different stories. And let me give you an example. When you think about a Prius versus a Hummer, right? Both are a car, right? They all have 4 wheels. They all have all these things that are exactly the same. But each one of them tells a different story. Like you can, there's been research that says that by the people that drive Priuses, you can almost determine what their political affiliation is, if they're more likely to own cats than they are dogs. I mean, all these different things. And you can do the same thing if you look at somebody that owns a Hummer. So, for example, on one, you would find a bumper sticker that reads, you know, my child is an honor roll student at George Washington, elementary school. And on the other, you'll find this bumper sticker that says, you know, my child can kick your honor roll child's butt, or something like that, you know.
Yep.
So the story that we tell is very important because that's what's going to actually have to, you know, shape our message. So what does it look like for a pediatric practice? Well, you can be a practice that is known for, like we were talking last episode, walk-in clinics, for example. You're an immediate care type thing. You could be an asthma clinic. You could be a nutrition clinic. You could be a holistic clinic. You have all these different angles that you can take. You can be one that is you know, we are highly empathetic. We're highly understanding, or we sit down and listen to you. Where the other ones, no, we're a quick get in and out, which are all great things. But it's important to identify exactly what your story is, because that's going to tell you what you know, how people are going to perceive you. Now, this is one thing that I always like to mention, which is in my talk I always make it seem like I just kind of try to make it funny, but I talk about Tiffany's, the jewelry company. I tell everybody, do you know that Tiffany's actually gives away their jewelry? They don't charge for the jewelry at all. They give it away for free. And then people are like, what? No, what do you call it? And then I ask, you know what they charge for? They charge for the blue box, all right? Because without the blue box, it's just any other piece of jewelry. But the blue box is what tells the story. If you see somebody walking with a blue box, or a Tiffany blue box, they're saying something about the gift that they're going to give to somebody. So I'm going to stop right there because I can talk too much about it. But that's my second kind of marketing thing that I like to talk about.
And then, you know, I'll underscore one of your points. By telling an accurate story, by describing your practice well, you will align the expectations of your patients to what you actually deliver. If you're not a type of practice who sees patients quickly and immediately, if you're not an in-and-out practice and you tell them that you are, you're going to create a problem for yourself. On the flip side, if you are an in-and-out practice, but you brag on your website about how you will spend an hour with each patient, and these are absurd examples, but you're going to cause another kind of problem. And so by telling an accurate story, not only do you align the expectations of your patients with what you actually deliver, the parents, just as you described with the you know, understanding someone's politics simply by the car they drive, parents tend to travel, I'll say they tend to travel in packs, or people who really like in and out visits or want to be seen today, now, right away, and it's a 10-minute visit, I got to get back to work. Those people, their friends tend to be those types of people as well.
Yeah.
And so by delivering an expectation, or pardon me, by fulfilling an expectation properly with that family, the odds of that family then turning to another one of their like-minded friends and saying, oh, I really like Dr. Betancourt or whatever, the odds are much greater. So the better job you do telling your story properly, the more likely it is that your story will be propagated for free by people who are like-minded. And the inverse is, the more misaligned your story is with your actual delivery, the more likely it is that it will be passed off to someone as a bad expectation. They told me this and they did that instead, and you know how the science of marketing works. People will tell stories that are poorly aligned and really well aligned, and you want to be in the latter half of the crowd.
Right. Well, that brings me up to my next point, which is that the story helps you define the product as opposed to the other way around, okay? So what happens is that the story, so the product or service in our case, is the physical manifestation of the story, okay? So if your story is that you're a customer-driven organization, and you're empathetic and you're loving and caring and all these things, but you have Miss Grumpy McGee as a front desk person, your product is not representing your story, okay? So it's very important that what you're saying in terms of the accuracy, that the story that you're telling, your product or your service is representing what your story, because what happens is that what you just said is that people start disregarding the story, and then what they're going to do is they're going to create their own story for their practice. So when they think of your name, they're going to say, oh, that practice, I could never get in there quickly, even though they say, or they talk about customer service, but their staff is so rude, or I don't know, whatever the case might be. So anyways, that's very, very important. So if you say that you are a certain thing, if you say that open 7 days a week, and you better be open 7 days a week, if that's what your story is going to be. The next one that I'd like to talk about is the interactions. Okay, people don't. I think people acknowledge that this is important, but they don't put nearly enough effort. The interaction is every single time your product, your story, or what you represent touches the patient in some way. This is the way that we answer the phones. This is the way that we collect letters. This is the way the bedside manners of the doctor. This is absolutely every single time that we touch the patient. We need to make sure that we are supporting the story that we are telling. Okay, and this is essentially the hero, right? This is the hero of marketing. People don't understand this. People is the hero of marketing because it is cheap to do. The interactions is one of the cheapest thing. It renders the most value, but if you do not get this right, it goes the other way, really, really fast. So everything that you do, it has to be in alignment with what basically you got to what you're preaching. You have to follow what you're preaching.
So Brandon, let's draw the line in the video cast here, and we'll talk about some more details in the podcast following this. And you know what I'm going to do though? We're going to toss a bone to our viewers, and we'll actually give them some tactical advice, even though we're not supposed to. We'll give them some tactical advice in a minute. So
right on the other side, we're gonna tease them and say, listen to the podcast so you can listen to the tactical.
Exactly. So on to the podcast. So Brandon, your points are all excellent, and I wish more and more pediatric practices would pay attention to them. Do you have anything to discuss before we jump into one or two or three tactical examples? I just want to make sure we don't miss anything. One last thing that
I wanted to finish because a lot of people, when they look at this, they're like, Brandon, just tell me if I should do, which is better, an ad in the paper or an ad in the magazine. And what I always like to say is that you're missing the point. First of all, when we think about great experiences as yourself, like if you've gone to a great restaurant, a great store, or anything else, what was it about that store that made the experience positive? Was it the ad that you saw as you were driving up on the big billboard? Was it the advertising in the paper, or did you see something on the newspaper or the TV that oh my goodness, that looks great, let's go eat there right now? They're generally the places that we love to go to have the things that I'm describing. They have an awesome story. The product is a manifestation of it. Every single thing that they do, that interaction that they have is exceptional in whatever it is that they do. And what happens is that a bond starts forming between the customer and the establishment, and at times the bond extends to other people. So this is the equivalent in the other, in the business world, or the other way is when you see a group of guys on a Harley Davidson all riding together with all their Harley gear. This is the equivalent of all the kids, all the cool kids, waiting in line for the next iPod. That doesn't happen with any other product, right? In our practices, it also happens. These are what we have, for example, in our practice, groups of mothers that were like lactating, they were in the lactation support group. Because we, at that time, one of the stories that we told is, lactation support and breastfeeding and all this other stuff. And these mothers got together and they formed these bonds with us and also with themselves. We also have a group of teachers that we've, for whatever reason, have really resonated with them. And this group feels very attached to us. And every new teacher that comes along, they're the very first ones to recommend us. If you do everything right, what I just described, you may have a chance, maybe have a chance of creating this bond, which once you have that, that is the holy grail of marketing. These are the hardcore advocates for your practice that go out there and they will do anything for you. So again, just to reiterate, people that dismiss this as I just want to know what the tactics are missing the point. Just look at places where you go and have an awesome experience, and you'll notice that they do what I'm describing perfectly, and that's why you love to go to this place.
And I'm going to sort of half summarize, half support your point by saying this. The most important marketing you can do by a huge margin is to deliver good service from the moment a patient gets in touch with your office. Because word of mouth and customer loyalty will do more for you than skywriting 400 back of the front page headlines. It doesn't matter. The relationship you get with your patients in your business, because it's a service business, is the best marketing you can give. And people who reach out to people like you and me, Brandon, people who are trying to substitute a web page for good service will not get a good return on their investment. That's been my experience. However, so let's say, Brandon, let's say that your practice already has strong relationships with your patients. Let's say that you're in a very competitive part of the country where there may be too many pediatricians. Okay? Let's talk about some tactical things that you've seen work, because we want to be clear. What works for you may not work somewhere else. You've got to do some experimentation. But let's talk about some examples that we have seen work, and what people might do to try them out.
Okay. Well, we've done a number of things with our execution. One of the things that we do is we've tapped into the what do you call it? Those welcome wagon. Do you guys have that over there?
Yep, I know exactly what you mean. Yep.
We reached out to them, and what we do is we send. They have like a magazine that they print up, and then they send to anybody that moves in new to the area. We do pay for that list, and we have an artwork that we already send, and then basically it comes in their packet of welcoming them to the community. And guess who's the pediatrician that's there? And we, this is another thing where the data helps out, because I know based on my data and some demographic that we have. This is a growing area. We have lots of young families. New schools are opening. Things like that. New subdivisions. So I can make a pretty good guess, because the welcome wagon doesn't give me demographics, but just because of the demographic in the area, I know that there's got to be families with children in them. Yep. So I do that, and then they actually send me the list, and I send a personalized message to them, welcoming them to the area, and we'd love to have the privilege of treating their children, and we talk a little bit about us, about our practice, and things like that. So that's one thing that we do that, and it's a good way to get new patients always. And every month I get the list, so it's always, in the summer months it's bigger because more people move in the summer months than they do in the wintertime. But in the wintertime I still get a few, probably about 80 to 100 in my area households a month.
How many of them do you think you convert to becoming patients? Do you have any idea?
So here's a marketing faux pas, what do you call it, like an error.
Yeah.
that I would hate to admit. So since we're talking just you and me, nobody's going to listen to this, then I feel comfortable. I don't track the new patients. I do track new patients, but not directly to the to that initiative. So during certain times of the year, I might ask the girls to say, "How did you hear about us?" And that's something that I wish I would have the time. So when we create a new patient in our new system, to put in there how did you hear about us, so then later we can query that and then know what's working. But I do track new patients in general, so I just look how many new patients that we have this month. But again, I can't specifically know if in fact it was that new movers.
But you would recommend that people at least take a stab at doing that.
Yes, of course. Don't do what I do. Do what I say. That isn't that.
That's the first lesson of management every day. Yeah, absolutely. When I asked you that question, I didn't know the answer. Sorry about that.
Yeah. I always tell people, like, I'm a consultant. I just tell you what to do. I don't actually do it.
Yeah, I can prove both the good and the bad in the practice. So talk to me for a second, because I have an example after you go. Talk to me for a second about social media and marketing. How's that working for practices these days?
The social media, I don't. One of the things that when we're talking about the story and what we do, and we know who our patients are, we try to get a good idea. Then we obviously use Facebook. Now we also have a Twitter, and I haven't seen that we get a lot of traction with Twitter as we do with Facebook. So that's like in our area, I guess people don't really care too much for Twitter, which is perfectly fine. We do have a presence. And then we also started with Pinterest. So my point in bringing those up is that I try new things all the time because I don't know exactly what's going to resonate the most. At this time right now, Facebook is winning. So what we do with Facebook is I think it's important to understand what you're going to be using the social media tool for. There are times when I use it for outreach, so I do a lot of advertising on Facebook, which I find it to be one of the best ways to advertise, better than many other of the traditional methods. But I also view my social media efforts as an extension of the practice. And what I mean by that is that it's not necessarily so much as an outreach, but we do several things with it. One is to continue to be a reliable source of information for our families. So if I find good data out there, which there's plenty out there, I use a lot of curators, like Dr. Stupi, for example, in Kansas City, and some of the other well-known established pediatricians online. I use them as curators of the web, and then anything that's really good or they give good commentary, I post it on our website, healthychildren.org or anything like that. And of course, I make announcements about the practice, and if we, like the other day, our phones went down, so I quickly put on there, and a lot of people are like, oh, great, I'm so happy that you told us on Facebook. That sort of thing. That's one thing. The other thing is I think it's important to establish a positive online presence. So that's what social media is doing for us. So when people, we may have gotten not so great Yelp review, let's say, but when people search for us, they see that negative review, but then they also see all these positive interactions for us on Facebook. And then as the third step, and I can go into each one of those and deep, we do a little bit more, but in the best interest of time, then we also do advertising there. And if you don't have a Facebook page, I suggest that you do, because Facebook allows you to be so laser focused in terms of who you want to target. So one of the bad things about just doing advertising is that it goes to a lot of people that are not in your immediate area. People don't travel very far to go to the pediatricians, at least in an urban area like where we live. Maybe if you're suburban, maybe if you're in a rural America, that's a different story. But for us, people don't like to travel very far. So with Facebook, I'm able to say, okay, here's my ad, and I want it to appear on people that live in this zip code, and it needs to appear in all these different places. So I can exclude the people that are already fans. I can include them and include their friends. There's a lot of flexibility that I can do. And the great thing about Facebook is that I can budget it. So I can give it a cap. After this much money, I do not want to pay any more, and then the ad doesn't appear any further. And I also get great metrics as a return, so I can see who clicked on it, how many people viewed it, and so forth. And you can do multiple let's go say you can do about 5 or 6 different campaigns, run them all at the same time, and then see the ones that aren't working at all. So we have one for like new parents. So I'll tailor it in a way for, need a new pediatrician, or I'll have one for school physicals. I'll have one if there's like maybe I used to be a little bit more proactive with this. Not this year, not so much, but last year there was a lot of rumbling about vaccines. So I would create one, vaccine saves lives, or one with my physician saying, I vaccinate my children, ask me how you can vaccinate yours, or one of those type of things. And then, then there's triggers in Facebook where if somebody mentions a word or things like that, the ad shows up. So that's how we do with social media in a nutshell.
Well, what I thought I would do is actually give a real-life example here on the screen of how easy it is to work with Facebook.
Okay.
I was not personally a Facebook fan for a long time, but that was for personal reasons. Now I'm kind of hooked into it. Anyone with kids these days, teenagers, needs to be on Facebook. But for pediatric offices, I think Facebook is a must-do. Why? Because the single largest segment of Facebook users in the United States is women between the ages of 26 and 40 who happen to control very acutely your patient volume, Yeah. And so when I try to help
one of the largest growing segments in Facebook is women like beyond 60 years old, 50 to 60 years old. That's the second, or one of the fastest growing groups. Which who are the 50 and 60 and 70-year-olds as it relates to our patients?
Yeah, they're the grandparents.
Grandparents, yeah.
Right. So what you want to do, and here's the thing that for pediatricians makes Facebook particularly valuable. For PCC, Facebook is not, it's valuable. We use it. I'm going to show you in a second. But, our clients are distributed all over the country, okay? And they're friends with each other, but they already know, we already contact them directly. But your parents, and Brandon, you're a perfect example. The parents who are in your end of town, whose kids all go to the same handful of schools, they have friended each other in 1,000 different ways, all right? Yeah. And when you use the marketing tools that are on Facebook, and they're remarkably cheap and incredibly controlled, you have a way to get your message in front of your families for a fraction of what it would cost you for an ad, and you're getting to the very people you want to get to. When you run an ad in a magazine or in the yellow pages, everybody who flips by it will see it. And in fact, only 1/3 of the people who see it, you probably even want to put an ad out to. But watch this. I'm going to flip over here. You can tell me how this looks in a second. I'm going to do a screen share. Okay, Brandon?
Go for it.
I'm going to share. Oops, hold on just a second. I got to do it this way. Okay. This will let me do it now. All right. In theory, screen share. Yeah, here we go. And let's see.
All right, I can see your screen.
Yep, here's PCC's website. You see that?
Yep.
This is me logged in as PCC on Facebook. And just the other day, we announced a PCMH workshop at the beginning of our users conference, okay? The one that you're going to be at. And so, hey, if you want to see PCC's users conference, come to our Facebook page. So we posted that, and look, we have some people who liked it. It's nice. You know what it's used to. But watch this. 94 people have seen this post already, okay? I can hit a promotion. Right here, you'll see a button that says promote this post. Okay, I can hit that button. I can type in a dollar amount. Okay, if I put it at $5, Facebook estimates that it will reach 2,700 to 5,100 people. If I use $15, it will go from 3,600 to 6,800 people. And if I go to $35, it will go from 6,800 to 13,000 people. To reach 13,000 people for $35
yeah.
is crazy.
Yep.
Okay. So watch this. This is how hard it is. You ready? 3, 2, 1. Add to budget. Now the first time I did this, I had to put in some credit card numbers, and I'm done. I just did it. And what will happen is over the next 2 or 3 days, sometimes this will last a week or two, let's say. All right. Over the next 2 or 3 days, I'll come back. Here we go. That will go out to 35,000 people. And what I'm hoping, all right, is all of the people who've friended PCC know people within their practice, or who know other pediatric offices, or the way that Facebook works, reaches out to people who work in pediatrics. It's going to drop these ads in front of people who type in the word PCMH or pediatric.
Yeah.
It's going to reach them. It just cost me $35. Now, is that a lot of money? No. For advertising, I know. Let's put it this way: for that $35, if one person signs up to our users conference, actually, this isn't a great example because we actually lose money for everyone who signs up to the PCMH conference because we want to get people to go. But let's pretend that we're a money-making endeavor, and I'll use you as an example. If you spend $35 on it to post on Facebook something new and exciting about your practice, and you get or keep one patient, you've got a huge return.
Yep.
So that's
if that patient comes, you've got to assume that the patient's going to come a few times. So.
Yeah. And a new family, one new family with one kid, is over the course of the next 5 or 6 years going to spend $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 with you. All right, or through you. They're not going to spend it. They're payers.
Right. Here's the thing about the people that are there already. The Facebook people that are on your page are already your biggest fans, literally. I mean, not only are they fans, but they're literally your fans. So these are the people that you really want to embrace the most, because these are the ones that I was talking about, those connections and making those positives and all those things. These are the people that are going to be creating those bonds with your practice, with the community, etc., with their friends, and they're going to be the ones that are going to be the most active, they're going to respond the most, and the more they respond, then their friends are going to see what they respond. And if you've ever been on Facebook, you know how that works. So,
yep.
But who better than the guys that are already your fans to work with them to make them advocates of your practice.
All right, I'm going to add one more thing. It's 1.5 things, and then I'll turn it back to you. The other thing I want you to do, I want every practice to do, is to go Google themselves. Because let me show you something. I'm going to go back to my screen share, and I'm going to show you something, because I just Googled you, Brandon, and you provide a good example. All right. Here, I just typed in Salute Pediatrics, and here's Brandon's website right here. Great. It's awesome that he appears at the top. Okay. And that sort of stuff we'll leave for another discussion. But here, let me tell you something important. Google has already created a website for you, whether you like it or not. Okay, and so what they do is they create a website for every business in the country. You need to go claim it. It's free. Yeah. All right, Brandon.
That picture that's there, I put that picture. I wrote the hours. You can go in there and you can modify it, and you can just tell them that you are the business, and you can go in there and
yeah. Here's PCC.
There's pictures that we have, and
and they will. If you don't take it over, whoops, I made a typo. If you don't take it over, someone else will. And like I say this, Brandon, here's my example of do as I say, not as I do. So we've got a picture in here that doesn't relate to us, okay?
Yeah.
And someone could write a review. But if you go back and look at yours, okay, people have written Google reviews. So one of the things I'm going to tell you is go in and find out what Google is saying, because Google is still the biggest fish in the pond.
Yeah.
Go in and find out what they're saying, and take care of things that way. Then the other thing I'm going to add is this. It's a very quick summary. It's not complete, but it's a quick summary of what I tell people about online reviews. Number one, don't wrestle with a pig. Never, ever, ever respond to someone's negative review online, except to say, if you're going to respond, the only thing I would tell you to say is, I'm really sorry to hear about your experience with our office. We'd be glad to help you find an office that suits your expectations. And here's why. When you wrestle with a pig, the pig only likes it and you get dirty. And a lot of the people, you know who the people are reviewing you half the time. It's someone who didn't want to pay a bill. I see, and here's the thing. Normal, reasonable people can read a negative review about you and actually say, I don't think I would want that person as a patient. Look at what they're saying. This person's only interested in the money. If you simply go on and say, I'm sorry to hear about your experience. I'd be glad to talk to you about it offline, but let us help you find a practice who's more appropriate for you. A reasonable person, 9 times out of 10, is going to say, that person's acting crazy. And they understand. If you, however, go online and say, you know, you've never paid your bill, you've only ever complained about us. You look just as bad as they do. Take the high road. The only time that you really can do anything about a review of you is if someone says something libelous. And in that instance, every single review site in the country has a process for addressing those issues. So if someone comes in and says, this guy poisoned my child, I had to end up in the ER because of his service or something like that, that is something you can do something about, and I encourage you to follow the proper channels to do that. But as a rule of thumb, the best thing you can do is tell your parents at the front of your front desk, if you enjoyed today, we would really love to see a positive review on the following websites. You can make links right there at the front page. You can use those little, I'm making
QR codes.
OCR codes. I'm trying to make a square. Okay.
QR code, Chip. QR code. Get with the program, please.
Yeah. You make a QR code and say, look, did you like did today work for you? Aim your cell phone at this. Go post a nice review for us. We appreciate it. All right. That stuff works. But don't get in a fight with people online, and don't lose any sleep over how people review you online.
Yeah,
that's my piece. So Brandon, back to you for a summary.
Marketing data is very important. Stories, the story that you tell parents, with everybody else. Your product or your service has to represent the story that you're telling. The interactions is the cheapest way to make your practice awesome, and it's often the one most overlooked. And then the connections that you form with your patients, be intentional about that, because those are the guys that are going to work on your behalf. Once you've got all those really squared away, then you can decide whether or not if Facebook or a mailing is going to do it for you.
All right, I couldn't agree more. The best marketing starts at home. If you are going to, and don't really monkey with anything until you get that taken care of. If you are going to go online, we didn't mention this, but a simple Facebook is best, or a simple web page is best. People just want to know who you are, where you are, and what you do. And if you do get on Facebook, which I do consider to be good marketing, consider their ad campaigns right now. They're cheap and they're incredibly effective, but you got to take care of the business in your office first. All right.
That does it for us today.
Thank you. I appreciate it, and we hope to hear from people. All right. Toodaloo.